The warning alarm screamed through the control room of Earth's orbital defense station. Captain Jake Morrison rushed to his command chair, his coffee forgotten on the desk behind him. The screen showed something that shouldn't be there, a vessel badly damaged drifting near Mars. "What am I looking at?" Jake asked his sensor officer. "Unknown ship, sir. It's leaking atmosphere. Life signs detected but faint." "They're dying." Jake didn't hesitate. "Launch rescue team. Get me a visual." The image that appeared on the main screen made everyone in the room go silent. The ship was unlike anything humanity had ever built. It was organic-looking, with curves instead of straight lines, and parts of it seemed to be growing like a plant. Half of it was torn open, exposing the interior to space. "They're hailing us," the communications officer said. "Audio only. They don't have enough power for video. Put them through." A voice filled the room. It was soft, musical, and spoke in a language nobody understood. But there was something in that voice: desperation, pain, hope. The computer worked quickly, analyzing the sounds and building a translation matrix. "Please, help us. We mean no harm. Children dying, please." Jake's jaw tightened. "Get that rescue team moving now." "I don't care what they are. Nobody dies on my watch." 3 hours later, Jake stood in the medical bay of the station looking at Earth's first alien visitors. They were nothing like the movies had predicted. The Varani were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer between blue and green. They had large eyes that held an ancient sadness. There were 47 of them, and 12 were children. The eldest among them, who called himself Keeper Sulith, spoke through the translation device the medical team had rigged up. "You saved us. We did not think anyone would. The galaxy has become cruel." "Who did this to you?" Jake asked. "The Dominion. They rule most of the known galaxy. We refuse to fight in their wars. We refuse to rank our people by their strength. We believe in knowledge and peace in art. They called us weak. They called us defective. They said we had no right to exist." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "You're refugees." "Yes, we have been running for 2 years. 12 ships left our world. Yours is the only one that survived. We heard rumors of a new species in this sector, a species that had not yet joined the galactic community. We hoped you might be different." "You hoped right," Jake said. "Welcome to Earth." The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Aliens were real and they needed help. The United Earth Council met in emergency session. The room was divided. Admiral Henry Cole stood at the podium, his face grave. "We need to think carefully about this. We've just learned that a galactic empire exists, one powerful enough to drive an entire species from their home. If we harbor these refugees, we could be making an enemy we're not ready to face." President Lisa Grant listened to the arguments for hours. She was a former teacher who had risen to lead Earth through its unification 30 years ago. She had seen humanity at its worst and its best. Finally, she stood. "I've heard all the arguments about safety, about caution, about protecting ourselves. They're all valid, but I keep thinking about something else. We spent thousands of years fighting each other on this planet. We committed genocides. We enslaved each other. We built weapons that could destroy our world. And we survived all of that because, eventually, enough people chose to be better, chose to help instead of hurt, chose compassion over fear." She looked around the room. "These people came to us because they had nowhere else to go. They're asking for the same thing our ancestors asked for when they fled persecution, a chance to live in peace. If we turn them away now, what does that say about everything we've built? What does that say about humanity?" The vote was close, but Earth granted asylum to the Varani. Lieutenant Amy Brooks was assigned as the primary liaison to the Varani refugees. She met them at their temporary settlement in the Australian outback, where the climate reminded them of their lost homeworld. "This is beautiful," Keeper Sulith said, looking at the red earth and endless sky. "We did not think we would ever see beauty again." Amy walked with him through the camp. The Varani were setting up their homes, strange structures that seemed to grow from seeds they planted in the ground. Within days, the buildings were complete, living structures that breathed and cleaned the air around them. "How does that work?" Amy asked, amazed. "We do not build separate from nature," Sulith explained. "We work with it. These buildings will provide shelter, filter water, and grow food, all from one seed. We can teach you if you wish." Dr. Paul Henderson arrived the next week with a team of scientists. He was a botanist who had spent his career trying to solve Earth's food shortage problems. When he saw what the Varani could do with plants, he nearly cried. "This could change everything," he told Amy. If we could grow buildings, if we could make plants produce this much food in this little space, we could end hunger on Earth. The Varani were eager to share. They had no concept of trade secrets or patents. Knowledge, they believed, should be free. In return, they wanted to learn about Earth. Amy brought them books, music, and art from every human culture. The Varani studied it all with fascination. They were particularly moved by Earth's history of struggle and survival. "You fought each other for so long," Suleth said to Amy one evening, "yet you stopped. You chose to unite. That is rare in the galaxy. Most species either destroy themselves or become destroyers of others. You chose a third path." "We almost didn't make it," Amy admitted. "There were times when it looked like we'd burn the whole world down. But you did not. That is why we have hope. If humanity could change, perhaps the galaxy can too." As the months passed, the Varani settlement thrived. Human children played with Varani children, learning each other's games. Scientists from both species worked side by side. The Varani taught advanced agriculture and biological engineering. Humans taught them about Earth's vast cultural diversity, about music and dance and the 1,000 different ways humans had learned to express joy. But in the darkness of space, far beyond where any human telescope could see, the Dominion watched. They had sensors everywhere, and they had noticed the Varani ship's final destination. They had noticed Earth's decision to grant asylum. High Commander Zarthol looked at the report on his screen and felt something he rarely experienced: curiosity mixed with contempt. A primitive species, barely capable of traveling their own solar system, had dared to shelter enemies of the Dominion. "Interesting," he said to his aide. "Let's see how long their compassion lasts when they understand what it has cost them." He marked Earth in the Dominion's database with a red flag: priority surveillance, potential threat to be neutralized. On Earth, unaware of the attention they had drawn, President Lisa Grant stood with Keeper Suleth at the opening ceremony of the first joint human-Varani research facility. "To new friends," she said, raising her glass. "To hope," Suleth replied. In a galaxy that had forgotten its meaning. They didn't know it yet, but their friendship had just changed the course of galactic history. For the first time in 10,000 years, someone had said no to the Dominion. And the Dominion never forgot. 6 months after the Varani arrived, the alarm sounded again. Captain Jake Morrison was getting used to this, but it still made his heart race. Another ship, another group of desperate people fleeing across the stars. This ship was different from the Varani vessel. It was metal, crude, and looked like it had been built from spare parts. The hull was covered in what looked like claw marks and burn scars. When Jake's team boarded it, they found 3,000 beings huddled in cargo holds that should have held only a few hundred. The Krell were nothing like the gentle Varani. They were large, covered in scales, with powerful limbs and sharp teeth. Many of the human rescue workers were afraid at first, but then they saw the scars. Every single Krell bore marks of chains, burns, and years of hard labor. Their leader called himself Chieftain Raxus. He was missing an eye and walked with a limp. When he spoke, his voice was rough like gravel. "We are escaped slaves. The Dominion used us in their mines for 300 years. We finally fought back. They killed millions of us. These are all that remain of our people." Jake looked at the crowds of Krell. Many were injured. All were traumatized. "You're safe now. We'll help you." Raxus laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Safe? You do not know what you have done. The Dominion does not forget. They do not forgive. By helping us, you have made yourselves their enemy." "Then we're enemies," Jake said simply. "Nobody deserves to be a slave." The debate on Earth was fiercer this time. People were afraid. The Varani looked harmless and peaceful. The Krell looked dangerous. Videos of them showed creatures who could tear a human apart with their bare hands. Officer Nicole Parker spoke at the council meeting. She was a historian who specialized in Earth's darkest periods. "I've studied every slave system in human history," she said. "Rome, the Atlantic slave trade, forced labor camps. Every time people said the same things. They said the slaves were dangerous. They said they were different. They said they couldn't be trusted. And every time those were lies told to justify cruelty." She pulled up images of the Krell's scars. "Look at what was done to them. For 3 centuries they were treated as tools, not people. They were worked to death and replaced. They finally fought for their freedom, and now we're debating whether they deserve help? What does that make us?" President Lisa Grant made her decision again, though this time with even more opposition. Earth would accept the Krell refugees. They settled in northern Canada, where the cold reminded them of the deep mines where they had labored. At first, humans kept their distance. The Krell looked frightening, and their culture was very different from both humans and Varani. But slowly, bridges were built. The Krell proved to be incredible engineers and builders. They had learned construction in the mines and could work with stone and metal in ways that amazed human architects. They started building homes, not just for themselves but for human communities too. Lieutenant Amy Brooks visited the Krell settlement as part of her expanded liaison duties. She found Chieftain Raxus overseeing the construction of a community center. "Your people work hard," she said. "We know nothing else," Raxus replied. "For 300 years we worked or we died. Now we work because we choose to. It feels different, better. Are you happy here?" Raxus was quiet for a long moment. "We do not know happiness yet, but we know we are not slaves. That is enough for now." While Earth adjusted to its new residents, Ambassador Carlos Diaz was making history of his own. He had been chosen to make first contact with the wider galactic community. Using information from the Varani and Krell, he located a neutral trading station on the edge of known space. What he found there shocked him. The galaxy was vast and full of life, but it was also brutal. Species were ranked by power. The strong ruled, the weak served. There was no democracy, no equality, no rights. There was only the hierarchy. Carlos met representatives from dozens of species. Most looked at him with a mix of curiosity and pity. "You are from Earth?" one alien asked. "The planet that takes in refugees?" "Yes," Carlos said proudly. The alien made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "Then you are fools. The weak do not deserve help. They deserve to be eliminated so the strong can thrive. That is the law of nature." "That's not law," Carlos said. "That's barbarism. It is reality. You will learn." Carlos sent regular reports back to Earth. Each one painted a darker picture of galactic civilization. The Dominion was just the largest of many empires built on conquest and subjugation. Slavery was common. Genocide was accepted as a valid political tool. Weaker species existed only at the mercy of stronger ones. "We're the strange ones," Carlos reported to President Grant. "We're the only species that seems to care about other species. They think we're insane or suicidal." "Maybe we are," Lisa replied. "But I'd rather be insane and humane than sane and cruel." 3 months after the Krell arrived, a third ship appeared. This one was small and moved in strange patterns. When Jake's team investigated, they found something that made even the experienced rescuers uncomfortable. The Soltari were insectoid. They had multiple limbs, compound eyes, and communicated through a combination of sounds and pheromones. They were about the size of large dogs, and there were 500 of them crammed into a ship meant for 50. Their spokesperson, a Soltari who chose the name Click for humans to use, explained their situation through a complex translation device. The Galactic Council declared our species biologically inferior. They said our form was disgusting. They voted to exterminate us. We are all that escaped. We were 6 billion. Now we are 500. The debate on Earth this time was shorter. People were getting used to the idea. Earth was becoming a refuge for the rejected. President Grant didn't even wait for a full vote. She used her emergency powers to grant immediate asylum. The Soltari settled in underground facilities in Nevada. They preferred the dark and the dry heat. Within weeks, they had transformed the empty tunnels into a beautiful underground city with luminescent fungi providing light. Dr. Paul Henderson visited with a team of biologists. What they learned amazed them. The Soltari understood biology on a level that seemed almost magical. They could modify organisms with precision that Earth's best genetic engineers couldn't match. "We evolved in caves," Click explained. "We learned to work with bacteria, fungi, and small creatures. We shaped them to light our homes, clean our water, feed us. What you call genetic engineering, we call gardening. Could you help us?" Paul asked. "We have diseases we can't cure, conditions we can't treat. We can try," Click said. "You gave us life. We will give you what we can in return." News of Earth's actions spread across the galaxy. On the trading station, Ambassador Carlos heard whispers everywhere he went. Some species were curious. Others were contemptuous. A few seemed interested but afraid to show it. One night, a being approached him in secret. They were small, covered in fur, and spoke in urgent whispers. "Are the rumors true? Earth accepts anyone? If they need help, yes. The Dominion will destroy you. They cannot allow this. If refugees have somewhere to go, if the oppressed have hope, the whole system falls apart. Let it fall, Carlos said. The being stared at him. You really mean it? You would fight the Dominion for people you do not even know? Yes. Then perhaps you are not fools. Perhaps you are the bravest species in the galaxy. Or perhaps there is no difference. Back on Earth, the three refugee groups were beginning to interact. Varani gardens grew with the help of Soltari biological knowledge. Krell built structures designed by human and Varani architects. Human children learned to play games from all three species. Lieutenant Amy Brooks organized a cultural festival. Thousands of humans, Varani, Krell, and Soltari gathered in the Australian settlement. There was food from 4 worlds, music from 4 cultures, and for one day, everyone forgot about empires and persecution. Keeper Sulith stood with Chieftain Raxus and Click, watching the celebration. I did not think I would ever feel joy again, Sulith said. This is worth fighting for, Raxus added, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, Click agreed. If the galaxy could see this, perhaps they would understand. But the galaxy wasn't watching this celebration. The Dominion was. And High Commander Zarthul was no longer curious. He was angry. Earth had now sheltered 3 groups of people marked for elimination. They had to be stopped. He called a meeting of his commanders. Prepare the fleet. We will give these humans one chance to surrender the refugees. If they refuse, we will destroy them and make sure every species in the galaxy knows the cost of defying us. On Earth, unaware of the storm coming toward them, President Lisa Grant gave a speech at the festival. Today we celebrate not just survival, but hope. We prove that different species can live together in peace. We prove that compassion is not weakness, and we prove that there is another way, a better way than the cruelty that dominates the stars. The crowd cheered, but in the darkness above, sensors detected a massive fleet entering the outer edges of the solar system. The Dominion had arrived, and they had come for war. The Dominion fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system like a swarm of metal locusts. There were over 300 ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They positioned themselves just beyond Mars and waited. Admiral Henry Cole stood in the command center looking at the display. He had spent 40 years in Earth's military. He had fought in the Unification Wars. He had seen humanity at its worst. But he had never seen anything like this. How long until they reach Earth? He asked. If they move at full speed, 18 hours. But sir, they're not moving. They're just sitting there. They're making a point, Henry said quietly. They want us to see them, to be afraid. President Lisa Grant arrived at the command center within the hour. She looked at the fleet on the screens and took a deep breath. Get me a communication channel. The face that appeared on the screen was not human. High Commander Zarthul was tall and angular, with skin like polished metal and eyes that glowed red. When he spoke, his voice was cold and precise. I am High Commander Zarthul of the Dominion 4th Fleet. You are harboring criminals and genetic defects. You will surrender them immediately for processing, or your planet will be sterilized. You have 72 hours to comply. Lisa felt her hands shaking but kept her voice steady. The people you call criminals are refugees. They committed no crime except wanting to live in peace. We will not surrender them. Zarthul tilted his head as if examining an interesting insect. You are a primitive species. You have been space-capable for less than a century. You dare to defy the Dominion? We dare to do what's right, Lisa said. These people asked for help, we gave it. That's not going to change. Then you have chosen extinction. How curious. We will return in 72 hours for your final answer. Use that time to reconsider, or use it to say goodbye to your world. The screen went dark. Panic spread across Earth like wildfire. The news networks showed the Dominion fleet on every channel. People watched the massive ships and knew that humanity's weapons would be like throwing stones at a tank. Earth had been united for only 30 years. They had some space stations, some mining facilities on the Moon and Mars, a small defense fleet, nothing that could stand against an empire that spanned 1,000 worlds. In the Australian settlement, Keeper Sulith gathered the Varani. Many were crying. This is our fault, one of them said. We brought this on them. We should surrender ourselves. No, Lieutenant Amy Brooks said firmly. She had been at the settlement when the news broke. That's not happening. But your people will die because of us. Our people will die if we become the kind of species that throws refugees to their killers to save ourselves. That's not a life worth living. Sulith looked at her with his large, sad eyes. You would really die for us? We would really fight for you, Amy corrected. And we're not dead yet. In the Krell settlement, Chieftain Raxus called his people together. Many of them were already preparing weapons. We have fought the Dominion before, Raxus said. We lost, but we are not slaves anymore. We are free. And free people fight harder than slaves ever could. The humans cannot win this fight, one Krell warrior said. Perhaps not. But they are willing to try. For us, for people they barely know, that is worth dying for. And if we must die, better to die free and fighting than to die in chains. The Krell roared their agreement. In the underground Soltari city, Click communicated with the other Soltari through complex chemical signals. They had a decision to make. We could hide, one suggested. We could go deeper underground. Perhaps the Dominion would not find us. And let the humans die alone? Click responded. They saved us from extinction. We were 6 billion. The galaxy reduced us to 500. These humans saw 500 bugs and said, you matter. How can we abandon them? The Soltari agreed. They would fight. Dr. Paul Henderson worked frantically in his laboratory. He had an idea. A terrible idea, but it might be the only chance they had. The Dominion is strong because they're all genetically similar, he explained to his team. They engineer their people for uniformity. It makes them efficient, but it also makes them vulnerable. If we can create a biological agent that targets their specific genetic markers. You're talking about a biological weapon, one of his assistants said. I'm talking about survival, Paul replied. I don't like it either. But what choice do we have? He worked with Varani biologists and Soltari genetic experts. Together they had knowledge that no single species possessed. The Varani understood plant biology. The Soltari understood how to modify organisms with precision. Humans understood weaponization. It took them 50 hours of non-stop work, but they created it. A virus that would target Dominion genetics specifically. It wouldn't kill, but it would make them very sick. Sick enough that they couldn't fight. This feels wrong, Paul said, holding the vial. War always feels wrong, Amy replied. She had been assisting with the military applications. But letting the Dominion massacre refugees feels worse. Captain Jake Morrison had a different mission. He gathered a team of pilots and some crazy Krell engineers who understood Dominion ship designs from their centuries of slavery. We can't beat them in a straight fight, Jake said. But we don't have to. We just need to get close enough to deliver the weapon. One ship, one payload. Right into their flagship. That's a suicide mission, one pilot said. I know, Jake replied. That's why I'm going alone. No, a Krell engineer named Thresh said. You will need someone who knows Dominion ships. I will come. Me too, said a Varani navigator named Lyra. I know their tactical patterns. Soon Jake had a full crew of volunteers. Humans, Varani, Krell, and even a Soltari who insisted their chemical sensors would be useful. It was Earth's first truly multi-species team. Ambassador Carlos Diaz had a different approach. He started broadcasting messages to the entire galaxy, using every communication channel the refugees had taught him about. The Dominion is about to attack Earth, he said in his broadcast. They're doing it because we gave shelter to people they wanted to kill. We're not asking for military help. We know you're all too afraid to stand up to them, but we want you to watch. We want you to see what they do to people who dare to show compassion. We want you to see what your silence costs. The message spread across the galaxy. Millions of beings watched. Most agreed Earth was doomed. But they watched anyway. Officer Nicole Parker trained mixed units of humans and refugees. The Krell taught humans how to fight in close combat. Humans taught the Krell about modern tactical communication. The Varani, pacifists by nature, refused to fight but volunteered as medics and support staff. I cannot kill, Keeper Suleth told Nicole, but I can save lives. If that helps, I will do it. The Soltari had a different contribution. They had developed a network of underground tunnels across Earth in their few months there. If the surface was destroyed, survivors could hide and survive underground for years. Always prepare for the worst, Click explained. That is how we survived when 6 billion of us died. As the deadline approached, President Lisa Grant addressed Earth one final time. In 72 hours, the Dominion will ask us to surrender innocent people to likely death. I'm going to tell them no. I know many of you are afraid. I'm afraid too, but I keep thinking about who we want to be as a species. Do we want to be the people who stood by and let others be destroyed to save ourselves? Or do we want to be the people who stood up even knowing we might lose because it was right? She paused, looking directly into the camera. Our guests from other worlds have shown us things we never imagined. They've shared their knowledge freely. They've worked beside us. They've become our friends. Some of you are afraid of them because they look different, but I've gotten to know them. They're not different from us in the ways that matter. They love their children. They value kindness. They want to live in peace. They're people, and we don't abandon people. Across Earth, in homes and shelters and military bases, people watched and made their own choices. Some fled to the underground tunnels. Others stayed to fight. Many were simply frozen with fear, unable to process that their world might end in ours. In the command center, Admiral Henry Cole looked at Earth's small defense fleet. 23 ships. That was all they had. Against 300 Dominion warships, it's not enough, he said to Lisa. No, she agreed, but it's what we have. The 72 hours ended. The Dominion fleet began moving toward Earth. High Commander Zarthul's face appeared on every screen across the planet. This is your final chance. Surrender the refugees. President Lisa Grant stood straight and looked directly at him. No, they're under Earth's protection. If you want them, you'll have to go through us. Zarthul showed something that might have been a smile. Very well. Your species will be remembered as the fools who died for rejects and weaklings. Begin the assault. The Dominion fleet surged forward. Earth's defense fleet, tiny and outmatched, moved to intercept. On the ground, mixed human and refugee forces took their positions. In his modified ship, Captain Jake Morrison and his multi-species crew prepared for their desperate mission. The battle for Earth was about to begin. Humanity had made its choice. They would rather die free and compassionate than live as cowards. The refugees, rejected by the galaxy, had finally found people who valued. The first shots came from orbit. Dominion warships fired massive energy beams at Earth's defense stations. 3 stations exploded in the first 30 seconds. Admiral Henry Cole watched the displays and felt his heart sink. All ships scatter formation. Don't give them clustered targets. Hit and run tactics only. Earth's small fleet broke apart, each ship moving independently. They were like gnats attacking elephants, but gnats could bite. Commander Laura Bennett piloted her fighter between 2 Dominion cruisers, firing at their communication arrays. Her shots barely scratched their shields, but she had learned from the Varani that disrupting their communications caused confusion. Keep moving, she told her squadron. Don't stay still for even a second. A Dominion ship fired at her position, but she was already gone. The beam hit empty space. She circled around and fired again, this time at their engine ports. Still barely any damage, but she was making them waste ammunition on a single fighter. On the ground, Lieutenant Amy Brooks commanded a defensive position near Sydney, where the Varani settlement was located. She had 200 human soldiers and 300 Krell warriors under her command. They'll try to land ground forces, she said. When they do, we hit them hard and fast, then fall back. We can't win in direct combat, but we can make them pay for every meter. A Krell warrior named Gresh stood beside her. He was massive, covered in scars from his slave days. We have waited a long time to fight our masters as free people. Today is a good day, Amy smiled grimly. Let's make sure we're all here to see tomorrow too. The first landing ships began descending through the atmosphere. They were huge, carrying thousands of Dominion soldiers. Earth's anti-aircraft systems fired everything they had. Some landing ships were destroyed, but most made it through. The Dominion troops emerged from their ships. They were tall, armored, and moved with military precision. They had fought 1,000 battles on 1,000 worlds. Earth should have been an easy conquest, but then they met the Krell. Gresh led the charge with a roar that shook the ground. The Krell crashed into the Dominion lines like a living avalanche. 300 years of slavery, of abuse, of watching their people die in mines. All of that rage poured out in a single moment. The Dominion soldiers were shocked. They had expected resistance, but not this fury, not this absolute refusal to back down. Human soldiers followed behind the Krell using tactics they had learned from the Varani. They didn't fight in straight lines. They used the terrain, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. They targeted communication equipment and command officers. Amy coordinated the defense from a mobile command post. She watched the battle through dozens of camera feeds, making split-second decisions. 3rd Squad, Fall back 50 meters. 5th Squad, circle around to their left flank. Krell units, hold your position but don't overextend. The Varani ran field hospitals just behind the fighting lines. Keeper Suleth worked tirelessly, using Varani medical knowledge to save lives. They treated humans and Krell without distinction, and even treated wounded Dominion soldiers that were captured. Why do you help them? A human medic asked, gesturing to a Dominion soldier they had just stabilized. Because that is who we are, Suleth replied. The Dominion treats life as cheap, we do not. Every life matters, even our enemies. In space, Captain Jake Morrison piloted his modified ship toward the Dominion flagship. His crew worked around him. Thresh the Krell monitored the engines. Lyra the Varani navigated through the battlefield. A Soltari named Buzz analyzed the chemical signatures of the Dominion ships to find weaknesses. We're getting into firing range, Jake said. Everyone ready? The weapon is armed, confirmed Dr. Paul Henderson, who had insisted on coming along to ensure the biological weapon deployed correctly. 6 Dominion fighters coming at us, Lyra warned. I see them, Jake said. He threw the ship into a spiral, dodging the incoming fire. Thresh had modified the engines using Krell mining techniques, giving them more power than the ship was designed for. It shook and groaned but held together. They danced through the battlefield. A Dominion fighter exploded as Commander Laura Bennett's squadron covered them. Human and alien working together, all focused on one goal: survive long enough to deliver the weapon. On Earth, the fighting intensified. The Dominion landed more troops, but they were finding Earth harder to conquer than expected. Every building could hide defenders. Every street could become a trap, and the defenders fought with a desperation the Dominion had never encountered. Officer Nicole Parker led a unit that included humans, Krell, and even a few young Varani who had insisted on fighting despite their people's pacifist traditions. My parents died running from the Dominion, one young Varani named Tellus said. I will not run anymore. Nicole's unit ambushed a Dominion supply column. They struck hard, destroyed the supplies, and vanished before reinforcements arrived. It was a small victory, but every small victory mattered. The Soltari contributed in their own way. Click and their people had created a network of sensors throughout the underground tunnels. They could detect Dominion troop movements and relay information to the defenders. Large force moving toward the Canadian settlement. Click reported to Amy. 3,000 soldiers. Get that to the Krell command, Amy ordered. They'll want to defend their home personally. Chieftain Raxus received the warning and gathered his warriors. The Dominion comes to our home. They think they can make us slaves again. Let us show them how wrong they are. The battle at the Canadian settlement was fierce. The Krell defended their new home with everything they had. Buildings that the Krell had constructed became fortresses. The Dominion had superior technology, but the Krell had something else. They were fighting for the first home they had chosen for themselves in 300 years. In orbit, things were going badly for Earth's fleet. They had destroyed a few Dominion ships through sheer determination and clever tactics, but they were losing. Ships were running out of ammunition. Shields were failing. People were dying. Admiral Henry Cole's command ship took a direct hit. Half the bridge crew was killed instantly. Henry himself was injured but stayed at his post. All remaining ships form up on me. We're going to ram the flagship. Sir, that's suicide, his navigation officer protested. Everything we're doing is suicide, Henry replied. But maybe we can buy Jake enough time to get close. The remaining Earth ships, battered and burning, formed a line and charged at the Dominion flagship. It was a desperate move, but it worked. The Dominion fleet had to respond to the threat, pulling ships away from other positions. Jake saw his opening. Now full speed! The modified ship shot forward, weaving through the chaos. Dominion point defense systems fired at them, but Lyra's navigation was perfect. She anticipated every move, guided by Varani understanding of tactical patterns. 10 seconds to deployment range, Paul announced. 5 seconds. Launch now. Paul released the biological weapon. It was contained in dozens of small pods that spread out in every direction, designed to infiltrate the Dominion fleet's air systems. Did it work? Buzz asked. They waited. For 30 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then the Dominion flagship began to drift. Its engines powered down. Inside, the crew was overwhelmed by sudden severe illness. Not deadly, but completely incapacitating. The effect spread to other ships as the weapon propagated through their connected life support systems. One by one, Dominion ships went dark. High Commander Zarthol, barely able to stand, stared at his screens in disbelief. A primitive species had defeated him. Not with superior firepower, but with biological warfare and sheer determination. "Retreat," he ordered weakly. "All ships retreat. The Dominion fleet." Those ships that could still move began withdrawing from Earth. They left behind thousands of soldiers on the ground, soldiers who quickly surrendered when they realized their fleet was abandoning them. On Earth, people barely believed it at first. The massive ships in orbit were leaving. The bombardment had stopped. They had won. Amy stood in the ruins of Sydney's defense line, surrounded by exhausted soldiers, both human and Krell. Gresh sat heavily on a piece of rubble, bleeding from a dozen wounds but alive. "We did it," Amy said in disbelief. "We actually did it. We fought as free people," Gresh replied. "For the first time in my life, I fought as a free person. We won because we chose to fight, not because we were forced to." Keeper Sulith emerged from the field hospital, covered in blood from treating the wounded. "Too many dead," they said sadly. "But we survived. Against all odds, we survived." In space, Jake's ship limped back toward Earth. Admiral Henry Cole's voice came over the radio. "Weak but alive." "Good shooting, Jake. You saved us all." "We saved each other," Jake replied, looking around at his multi-species crew. "That's the only reason it worked." Ambassador Carlos Diaz watched the Dominion retreat from the trading station where he had been broadcasting the entire battle to the galaxy. Millions of beings across thousands of worlds had watched. They had seen Earth, a primitive species by galactic standards, defeat the Dominion through cooperation and courage. His communication console lit up with thousands of messages. Other species, other refugees, other victims of the Dominion's cruelty. They all asked the same thing. "Can we come to Earth too?" President Lisa Grant stood in the ruins of the command center. The battle. 3 months after the battle, Earth was still rebuilding. Entire sections of cities were gone, replaced by construction sites where humans, Krell, and even some Varani worked side by side. The dead numbered in the millions, and every family on Earth had lost someone. But something new was growing among the ruins. Ambassador Carlos Diaz stood in the newly constructed Unity Hall, a building designed jointly by human architects, Krell engineers, and Varani artists. It was both beautiful and functional, a symbol of what different species could create together. Today he was meeting with representatives from 12 different species. They had all arrived in secret, all fleeing persecution from various empires across the galaxy. Some were refugees like the Varani, others were rebels. A few were entire governments of small worlds that had been threatened by larger powers. "Thank you for coming," Carlos said to the assembled beings. "We know it was dangerous for you to travel here." A fox-like being named Kessa spoke first. "We had to see for ourselves if the stories were true." "Did you really defeat the Dominion?" "We survived them," Carlos corrected. "There's a difference. No one survives the Dominion," a crystalline being named Shard said. "No one even tries. But you did. You accepted refugees and then fought a galactic empire to protect them. Why?" President Lisa Grant entered the hall and answered the question. "Because it was right. Because we believe that all people deserve dignity, regardless of their strength or power. Because we're tired of a galaxy that crushes the weak." "Beautiful words," Kessa said. "But the Dominion will return. They cannot allow this defeat to stand, and when they come back they will bring everything they have." "Then we need to be ready," Lisa replied. "Not just Earth, but everyone who believes there's a better way. That's why we're proposing something new. An alliance based not on power, but on mutual respect and cooperation." She activated a holographic display. It showed a network connecting dozens of worlds. "We're calling it the Coalition of Free Worlds. Every member has equal voice. Every species contributes what they can. We share technology, resources, and knowledge freely, and we defend each other." "That's insane," Shard said, but there was interest in their crystalline voice. "Sharing technology freely? No species does that. Technology is power. Hoarding technology is how the galaxy got this way," Lisa replied. "We think cooperation is more powerful than any weapon." Dr. Paul Henderson was meeting with scientists from the various visiting species. They had set up a research station on the moon, far from Earth's population centers. What they were discovering amazed everyone involved. "Look at this," Paul said, showing his colleagues a plant growing in a containment field. We combined Varani biological engineering with Krell mineral processing and Soltari genetic modification. This plant can grow in pure sand and converts it into fertile soil. It could terraform dead worlds. A scientist from Kessa's species, a botanist named Farah, stared at the plant in wonder. This would take my people centuries to develop alone. You did it in months? Because we worked together, Paul said. No single species has all the answers. But if we combine what we know, we can solve problems that seemed impossible. The research station became a hub of innovation. Scientists from different worlds worked on projects that benefited everyone. Medical treatments, agricultural techniques, energy systems, all developed through cooperation and shared freely. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Amy Brooks, now promoted to major, was building something equally revolutionary. The Coalition Defense Force combined personnel from multiple species. It was chaos at first. Human tactics don't work for Krell, Gresh complained during a training exercise. We are too large, too slow for your quick movements. Then we adapt, Amy replied. Krell take positions that need strength and endurance. Humans take positions that need speed and flexibility. We work together, not the same. She brought in Varani strategic advisors, Soltari reconnaissance specialists, and soldiers from the new species joining the coalition. Each species had different strengths. Humans were adaptable and creative. Krell were strong and resilient. Varani were excellent at planning and coordination. Soltari could operate in environments that would kill other species. Captain Jake Morrison was appointed as military advisor for the coalition. He spent his time visiting different member worlds, teaching them the tactics that had helped Earth survive. The Dominion fights with overwhelming force, he explained to a group of officers from various species. They expect you to meet them head-on and be crushed. So don't be unpredictable. Hit them where they're weak. Make them waste resources. Force them to fight your way, not theirs. But we don't have the weapons to hurt them, one officer protested. You don't need to destroy them, Jake replied. You just need to make it too costly for them to win. Earth didn't beat the Dominion through superior firepower. We beat them because we made them decide the conquest wasn't worth the cost. Back on Earth, the refugee settlements had transformed into thriving communities. The Varani Gardens now covered hundreds of acres, producing enough food to feed Earth's population and the growing number of refugees. The Krell had built structures that would last for centuries. The Soltari underground cities had expanded, providing shelter for anyone who needed it. Keeper Sulith walked through the Australian settlement with President Lisa Grant. The Varani elder had aged visibly in the past months, but there was peace in their eyes. When we fled our homeworld, I thought our people were finished, Sulith said. I thought we would die as refugees forgotten by the galaxy. Instead, we found hope. You helped give us hope too, Lisa replied. Before you came, humanity was looking inward. We were focused on our own problems. You reminded us that we're part of something bigger. The galaxy will resist what you are building, Sulith warned. The Dominion is not the only empire that benefits from the current order. Many species profit from keeping others down. Let them resist, Lisa said firmly. We're not trying to conquer anyone. We're just offering an alternative, freedom, equality, cooperation. If that threatens them, it says more about them than about us. Officer Nicole Parker had taken on a new role, historian and cultural liaison. She documented everything that was happening, preserving it for future generations. But more importantly, she worked to help different species understand each other. We're going to make mistakes, she told a group of human and alien children at a joint school. We come from different worlds, different cultures. Sometimes we'll misunderstand each other, but that's okay. What matters is that we keep trying, keep learning, keep growing together. The children, human and alien, played together without the prejudices of their elders. They didn't care that some had scales and others had fur. They were just friends. 6 months after the battle, the coalition held its first official meeting. Representatives from 15 species gathered at Unity Hall. Some were refugees Earth had saved. Others were small governments that had broken away from larger empires. A few were independent worlds that had remained neutral but were now willing to join. President Lisa Grant addressed the assembly. We're not here to build another empire. We're here to create something new. A union where species work together as equals. Where the strong protect the weak not to dominate them, but to help them grow strong themselves. How do we know humans won't just become the new Dominion? Kessa asked. It was a fair question. You don't, Lisa admitted. We could fail. We could become the thing we're fighting against. That's why we need you to hold us accountable. That's why every species here has equal voice, including the power to remove us if we abuse our position. The vote was unanimous. The Coalition of Free Worlds was officially formed. Chieftain Raxus represented the Krell in the Coalition Council. He who had been a slave for 300 years now sat as an equal among the leaders of multiple worlds. When he spoke, people listened. The Dominion taught us that strength means crushing others, he said. Earth taught us that real strength means lifting others up. I know which lesson I believe. I know which future I want for my children. His words resonated. Across the Coalition, a new generation was growing up with different values than their parents. They saw cooperation not as weakness but as wisdom. They saw diversity not as a problem but as an asset. Admiral Henry Cole, retired now and serving as a military advisor, gave an interview to a young journalist. "Do you think the Coalition can survive?" she asked. "I think it has to," Henry replied. "The old way, empires crushing smaller species, the strong preying on the weak, that's led to nothing but suffering for thousands of years. We're offering something different. It might not work, but it's worth trying." The Dominion, meanwhile, had not been idle. High Commander Zarthul had been demoted for his failure at Earth, but the Empire was preparing a second assault. This one would be larger, more thorough. They would not underestimate the humans again. But word of the Coalition spread faster than Dominion ships. Every refugee that reached Earth told others. Every world that joined the Coalition showed others it was possible to resist. The galaxy was beginning to stir. On Earth, at the field hospital where Keeper Sulith still worked, a new group of refugees arrived. They were the Thax, a species of aquatic beings whose world had been strip-mined by the Dominion. There were only 200 of them left,